So as I mentioned, our today's topic is tissues. First of all, I want to clarify the difference between the specific term tissue in anatomy versus the more common term tissue that we use when we talk about different organs. The tissues that we talk about in anatomy, there are four of them. There's a nervous tissue, which allows different organs to communicate, which consists of brain, spinal cord, and nerves. There's a muscle tissue, which main function, not the only one, but main function, is movement. And muscle tissue includes skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscles. Then there is an epithelial tissue, which is the boundary. And as many boundaries, it can protect in various forms. It can secrete various types of secretions, from sweat to hormones. It can absorb, for instance, nutrients. And it can filter, for instance, wastes in your kidneys. One important feature of epithelial tissue that I want you to keep in mind all the time is that when we say that it's a boundary, it is a boundary between the tissue and usually some kind of an empty space. As we move on, I will give you multiple examples of that. Okay? Finally, connective tissue. Tissue that first of all connects, but also protects and supports. For example, our bones provide protection and support. Before we actually go into different specific types of tissues, a couple of notes. First, when we use the expression liver tissue, or brain tissue, or kidney tissue, or fat tissue, we use the term tissue in more colloquial way, that it's just a bunch of cells. It's just stuff, It's not a separate type. Doesn't reflect what actual types of tissues comprise liver or kidney or whatever. Okay? So now, when you look at embryonic sources of tissues and on the embryonic development in general, I want you to be comfortable with two terms. One term is proliferation. I am going to use it. It's growth, cell division. For instance, when we think about a tumor, cells divide. They divide abnormally. So we can say that it's an abnormal proliferation. The second term that I want you to know is the term differentiation. Differentiation means specialization. So, for example, many of you are going into a nursing program. Some of you go into dental hygiene, whatever. When you will go through a nursing program, you will eventually become a nurse that focuses on a particular specialty. Pediatric nurse, geriatric nurse, medical surgical nurse. Does that idea make sense? When you become specialized, you differentiate. Cells can become more specialized, and this process is differentiation. So let's take a look at the differentiation of cells through the different stages of human development. When secondary oocyte is fertilized by a sperm cell, forming the fertilized ovum, it's one cell. And when it starts dividing, forming first morula and then blastocyst, all cells in morula are still identical. They're not different from each other, literally not different. This is why identical twins are genetically identical, because they effectively are two cells that were produced by the division of a single fertilized ovum. All those cells within the morula are called totipotent. Okay? Think about the name, toti. Total, everything. Potent, potency, ability to become something, potential. So these cells have a potential to become literally any other cell in the human body if they are given correct cues. These totipotent embryonic stem cells eventually go through the first round of differentiation, becoming pluripotent stem cells. So pluri is cognate with the English word plural, which means many, very many. Pluripotent stem cells can become many different tissues, but since they already partially differentiated, their ability to develop into specific tissue is somewhat restricted. Let's take a look at what these cells are. Pluripotent stem cells form three distinct layers within the developing embryo. The outermost layer is called ectoderm, ecto, outside. The innermost layer is called endoderm, endo, inside. And the layer in between is called mesoderm. Cells of each layer can develop into a certain set of organs. Now, these organs are many. The ones that I want you to understand, some of them are paradoxical, some of them are not, but the ones that I want you to understand and remember and be able to answer the related question on the exam are follows: 2 organ systems per embryonic tissue. Ectoderm specifically develops into skin and the nervous system. I don't think that the idea that ectoderm becomes skin is paradoxical, right? It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of interesting that it's also becoming a nervous tissue, but it is true the neural tube starts as a part of ectoderm. Mesoderm, to specific systems that you should be aware of, are muscles and renal system, kidneys and muscles, the product of the mesoderm. Kidneys. I highlight this. Yeah, I understand it's unfortunately the image part of the book could be better. Let's put it this way. It's free, remember. And finally, endoderm develops into digestive system, okay, and respiratory system. Now, this list of 6 organ systems does not include many others, but since I told you, you don't have to know others. As long as you know the 6, you're good. Eventually, embryonic cells that are pluripotent specialize even more, becoming multipotent stem cells. In my opinion, the best example are the cells of the bone marrow. These cells, they are multipotent stem cells. They can develop in a bunch of different white blood cells, into red blood cells, into megakaryocytes that produce platelets. So they have several potencies, but you can see that the potencies are even more limited. And finally, multipotent stem cells sometimes can develop into unipotent stem cells. I'm going to write that word here because it's not in the skin. You can imagine the part that is uni means one. There, you would say, wait, how is that a stem cell? I'm going to give you an example, which is really easy to process. So you have cells in your nose, so-called olfactory neurons, responsible for the smell sensation. They die. You can inhale some toxic fumes, you can inhale some hot air. You understand what I'm talking about. You need to replace them. So adjacent to those neurons are unipotent stem cells that will develop into those olfactory neurons and replace them. Another good example are osteogenic stem cells in your bones. They can divide and they can only develop into a cell called osteoblast. You don't need to know those examples, but you need to be aware of what a unipotent stem cell is. Any questions on this part? Okay, so now we're going to start chatting about epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue is classified based on two main characteristics: the number of layers and the shape of the cells. When there is only one layer, we call such epithelium simple. When there are multiple layers, we call it stratified. In terms of shape, cells can be classified as squamous, flat, cuboidal, shaped like a cube, and columnar, which are elongated vertically.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Columnar are elongated vertically. Now, there is a special type called pseudostratified. It is shown here at the bottom. So it has one layer of cells. But if you look at the position of a nuclei, it looks like nuclei form two layers. So this is why we call it pseudo-stratified. Looks like it is stratified, but it is not. All right? So the name of the epithelial tissue forms by the combination of the words showing how many layers and what shape cells have. So this will be stratified, squamous. This will be simple columnar. Two more important, really important statements about epithelial tissue. First of all, when you look at the epithelium, I'm going to use these images for my illustrations. So this here, sort of the foundation on which the cells are sitting, is called basement membrane. It's present in all epithelia. So this is basement membrane as well. Second, really important concept is that an epithelium, and I'm going to be using simple columnar epithelium as an example, epithelium has two distinct sides. I will try my best to use two different colors right now. Bear with me. Okay? So this side here It's called apical, actually. Let me remove it. So this is apical side. And this is basolateral. Why I think it's worth mentioning them. Apical and basolateral. They're not the same. By this statement, I mean that proteins, for example, structures that you can find on the apical side, will be absent on the basolateral and vice versa. I'm sorry, can you shut down that, not the flashlight? There's a flashlight working. Okay, that's it. Okay, good? Understood, folks? Okay, so that's one important. Any epithelium has this distribution. If you look at, for example, I don't know, stratified squamous, right? So this will be apical side, and these will be basolateral. Does that make sense? Question? This one? Yeah, I just can't really separate when I draw it. Okay, does that make sense? I'm showing the side, yes, it's going to go over the basement membrane, yes. And a really important statement, that's the feature that distinguishes epithelium from any other tissue. It is not vascularized, meaning that it doesn't have blood vessels. You may ask, well, how does it receive oxygen and nutrients? By diffusion from the blood vessels that are nearby. Any questions? All right. So cells in the epithelium are linked to each other. I'm going to use that specific term, linked. They're linked to each other by junctions, and these junctions play different roles. The type of junctions that completely stands out are the gap junctions. The function of gap junctions is signaling. So imagine that somebody spills a very nasty smelling substance in the hallway. Will you feel the smell in this room? Yes, you will feel the smell because the door is open. And that smell, those vapors, are going to diffuse into the room, and you're going to, in this example, the door is a gap junction. The flow of ions, the passage of ions between the cells is the way for cells to communicate with each other. So the only function of gap junctions is communication. Another functional explanation of why we need them is this. Imagine that, let's say somehow I know that all of you in this class are in your own group chat, okay? I'm just making it up. So I need to send a message to all of you. What I can do, I can ask someone from the class, say, hey, can you let everybody know? And that person lets everybody know by communicating to them. It's faster, and for me it's faster. It does not require me going on sending everybody individual email, something like that. Make sense? So you will see that cells that have to work together often are connected by gap junctions. Second type of junctions is tight. Well, the name speaks for itself. Tight junctions tie two cells together. The main point of that is that it's really hard for various substances to pass between the cells. Now, is it impossible? No. But that transport is very tightly controlled, no pun intended. And the final type that I want you to know are anchoring junctions. Hold cell together, attached to basement membrane. The question that I receive often, do we need to know the specific differences between desmosomes, junction adherence, or hemidesmosome? The answer is no, you don't. You do not.
Yeah, what is that?
What do you mean?
You don't hear that noise?
Sound? I have no idea. I don't know. It happens sometimes. It just happens. So let's talk. So this list that you will see now contains the exact epithelial tissues that you need to know. For each tissue, there are several things you must understand. First, the function. Second, how the structure of the tissue is relevant to its function. Third, where it can be found. I will explain what I mean. You don't need to memorize a bunch of stuff here, a bunch of organs. And lastly, you should be able to identify the tissue under the microscope, on a microscopic picture. Okay? This is what you're going to be doing today in the lab, looking at different tissues. Okay? So, before we start, I want to emphasize one really important. I'm trying to see where it is. Okay, that would work. So we're going to start with simple squamous epithelium. So the term simple, what does that mean? One layer. Yes. The term squamous, what does that mean? Flat. So one layer, flat cells. Not terribly thick. So it wouldn't work as a good protector. It probably wouldn't work as a good secretion or absorption system because the cells are so flat. The volume is very, very minimal, right? So what do you need? This kind of fragile layer, single layer of flat cells. Filtration, diffusion, transport. Now, if you think about diffusion, the very intense diffusion happens in the lungs. If you think about filtration, glomeruli of kidneys and your blood vessels are lined with simple squamous epithelium because think about what your blood vessels do. There's an exchange between the tissues and the blood, nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide. You need a very thin layer, okay? So here you can see the alveoli in the lungs and the walls of alveoli formed by simple squamous epithelium. Now, to clarify my comment before that you need to know where a particular tissue can be found. You cannot expect, I will never ask you a question, what type of epithelium lines stomach? No. But I can ask you the question, stomach is the place of intense secretion and some absorption. what type of epithelium is most likely present there. And I tell you, simple squamous, simple columnar, transitional, or stratified squamous. And I think, okay, out of all these four, the only one that functions as a secretory and absorptive epithelium is columnar. It's got to be columnar. Do you see what I'm trying, what I mean by you need to know where to find them based on their function, not memorizing a bunch of organs. Am I clear? So let's make the cells a little larger and talk about cuboidal epithelium, simple cuboidal epithelium. Its function is simple: secretion and absorption. Examples: tubules of kidneys, a lot of secretion and absorption. Various glands, a lot of secretion and absorption. And the ovarian surface to maintain the development of a follicle and oocyte. So in this example, you can see simple cuboidal epithelium. These are individual cells. I mean, they shape as a cube is slightly exaggerated, but, you know. What I want to focus your attention on, very specifically, if you look at this entire structure, okay, so there are individual cells, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, right? But what's in the center? Nope. Nope. A nucleus. Each individual cell has a nucleus. So this is a nucleus. Okay? Those are all nuclei. Right? Make sense? But this is an empty space, the one that I point at. This is lumen. Now, the term lumen in anatomy means empty space inside of a quote-unquote container. Let me ask you, container or tube? Your esophagus, is it a tube?
Yes.
Inside of esophagus, that empty space is the lumen. Trachea, is it a tube?
Yes.
Same. Lumen of a trachea. Intestines, is it a tube?
Yes.
Yes. So the inside of intestines is the lumen. Stomach, is it a container? It's a bag. It's effectively a bag. Inside, like that empty space inside the stomach, a lumen of a stomach. Make sense? Because I'm going to be using that term in the future, and I want you to be aware. Okay, now we get to simple columnar epithelium. So column-shaped cells, right? You can see them here. Okay. So these are nuclei. You can see that nuclei are kind of squished. They elongated vertically. So what are the functions? Absorption and secretion, first and foremost. Absorption, secretion, and mucus propulsion. Okay? So, for instance, the surface of the epithelium, right here, you see this kind of fuzzy layer? Those are membranous folds on the surface of columnar cells in the intestine that are called microvilli. But for example, in fallopian tubes, the columnar epithelium has cilia. Can someone suggest what is the function of cilia in the fallopian tubes? Movement of what? Oocyte and then egg. Yes. Does that make sense? Now here's the clinical connection for you. If fallopian tubes become infected, they become inflamed. They become inflamed, the cells, the proper cells, will be destroyed and be replaced by scar tissue, which does not have cilia. If there's no cilia, well, patches of no cilia, the egg cannot move properly, which means a woman may develop infertility, or maybe even worse, ectopic pregnancy. When, due to the slow movement, the fertilized ovum develops into an embryo, not in the uterus, but in the fallopian tube. Okay? Make sense? Okay. So, you don't need to know the list, but most of the digestive tract, yes, stomach to rectum, gallbladder, respiratory system, fallopian tubes, that kind of stuff. Now, you may have noticed that columnar and cuboidal epithelium, they share a lot of functions. They both can absorb, but they both can secrete. So if I ask, there's a lot of absorption and secretion going on in the small intestine. What epithelium are you going to find there? I will never put simple columnar and simple cuboidal as two possible answers. At this point, you don't have to know the difference. You see what I'm saying? Like, you look at the question, and says, absorption and secretion. Either simple columnar or simple cuboidal. There will be only one answer out of this. Does that make sense? Cool. Now, one more thing to just demonstrate. So this whole thing, so-called goblet cell, it kind of looks like a goblet. The function of goblet cells is to produce mucus. In fact, when you're going to be looking at the tissue samples, you're going to see the mucus. What's in that light space? Say again? Fluid? Lumen, thank you, yes. Thank you very much. Exactly. That space it's very small. Like you see that those parts are very narrow, but it is a part of a lumen. Pseudostratified epithelium, I find it boring. So one layer of nuclei, another layer of nuclei, another layer of nuclei. But if you look at the cells, they just have weird shape. It's still one layer. They just have nuclei at different heights, levels, yes. Okay? Make sense? Okay. Not too much. The surface of pseudostratified columnar epithelium usually has cilia to move mucus. Okay? So function, secretion, and propulsion of mucus. You see, they do not absorb. Another clinical connection for you. These cells, pseudostratified squamous cells, line the surface of the human trachea. And they have cilia, and the cilia moves mucus. In which direction? In your trachea? Up. Up. It moves because that mucus traps everything, and then you have to get rid of this. So when it goes up to your larynx, what do you do with it? If you would cough it up, you would cough every second. Every person in this room would be just coughing and spitting. No, you swallow it. And then it goes in the stomach, where acid inactivates it. Okay? You do swallow it. Stratified squamous epithelium. So you have many layers of flat cells. In this image, by the way, like this, let me choose different colors, it will be more obvious. So this would be the epithelium, like that part of the image is stratified squamous epithelium, a lot of cells, a lot of layers. So layers are different. So basal cells are more cuboidal, surface cells are flat. Sometimes this epithelium can be keratinized, So cells on the surface can be filled with a protein called keratin, and these cells are dead. On the contrary, but basal cells actively divide. So you can think of it this way. Basal cells divide and push other layers to the surface. On the way to the surface, those cells slowly die, so when they reach the surface, they're dead. Would your body care, your organism, would it care if it lost dead cells? Probably not. So the superficial layer of stratified squamous epithelium is supposed to be lost. Due to what? How can you get those? I'm going to give you a hint. It's mechanical force. Come on, folks.
Like throwing up, maybe?
Again?
Throwing up?
That's very specific, but to some extent, yes.
Just movement?
Huh?
Moving?
Just moving, or... Because if I'm doing this, like, if I have dead cells on the surface of my skin, they're not going anywhere. What do I need to do to get rid of the cells from the skin surface? Not just touch.
Brush.
Rub, right? So, abrasion and friction. Okay? Now, let's do this. I'm going to put the location down so you don't see it. I'm going to ask you. Stratified squamous is the easiest one to categorize. Where in the human body can you find stratified squamous epithelium? Keep in mind, friction. Skin. Keep going. Keep going. You're right. Huh? No. I mean, we're not supposed to stick our fingers in the nose. Mouth, though, yes, because the food that we get into our mouth can be pretty rough, right? So, where else?
Vagina.
Yes. Reproductive organs. Glans penis, the same story. Vagina and glans penis. More. Mouth is good. I'm not going to torture you. So basically all the way down to stomach. Throat, the lower part, oropharynx, laryngopharynx, and the esophagus. That's rough. That's the channel that your vomitus goes through, and vomitus is not terribly pleasant, so you'd rather lose dead cells, right? One more place. Friction, abrasion.
Skin.
We mentioned. Well, two more places, actually. Say again. What'd you say?
The butthole.
The what? Anus. Yeah. Absolutely. Stop being shy. We're not, like, it's,
I don't think she.
I understand, like, yeah. So, anus. Correct. Two more. Say again?
Anywhere where there's mucus.
No. Usually, mucus means the presence of columnar. Okay? So, like, your intestines and your stomach, a lot of mucus, columnar epithelium. Your respiratory passages, mucus, columnar epithelium. That's skin. That's all skin. Two identical organs. Dude, that's a giveaway. No, it's skin.
Your breast.
My what? Two identical organs. Ears are skin. Eyes. We rub them, right? We rub our eyes. Our eyes actually are covered with stratified squamous epithelium, which is completely transparent. Okay? So, you're losing those outer layers. And the last epithelial type, which is really, really specific, is the transitional epithelium. So, transitional epithelium consists of the cells that are sort of at the baseline, kind of columnar-ish, cuboidal-ish. Transitional epithelium can stretch. And it's found exclusively in the ureters, urinary bladder, and the part of urethra. Okay? So, just to think critically, think analytically. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's not an easy question, but it's kind of maybe easier. So let's say male urethra. It's easier with the male urethra because it's longer. Almost entire urethra is covered with transitional epithelium. But at the very end, like before the urethral orifice, orifice is the opening, right? So opening of the urethra where pee is coming from. Before that opening, epithelium changes from transitional to what? More specifically, stratified squamous, because some stuff can kind of poke around, you know? That makes sense? So, in female, same story. Most of the urethral transitional epithelium, but at the very end, it's stratified squamous. Go ahead.
So if this is the only one that stretches, what about the uterus? Because when a woman is pregnant, it stretches. What is that?
So, different types of stretch. Because here, stretch occurs in seconds or minutes, right? When your bladder fills up with urine, it's pretty fast. The baby grows 9 months. It takes a lot of time, and epithelium can grow. And the signals, progesterone in particular, that comes from corpus luteus, if fertilization happened. So fertilization happens, corpus luteus is formed in the ovary, it produces progesterone. Progesterone will stimulate both the growth of the uterus itself, it's going to be larger, and the muscle is going to be thicker, and the growth of epithelium. Okay? Did I answer your question? Okay. So epithelial tissue forms glands. And good news, no questions about that picture. I should have taken a long time. It's the most boring picture in the entire, in 2 courses. I guarantee you that. It's glands of different shape. But I guarantee you that if I will make you to memorize that, you will. And then you will forget all of this 15 minutes after the end of the exam. So this, I find it completely just absurd. What I absolutely want you to understand is the difference between endocrine and exocrine glands, first of all. Endocrine glands always secrete into the blood, and they secrete hormones. Exocrine glands,
You said
endocrine secrete into the blood. And exocrine secrete not in the gland. It can be on the surface of your skin, your sweat glands. It can be in the lumen of your intestine, a chunk of pancreas. It can be into your mouth, salivary glands. Okay? All good? Okay.
You said endocrine glands secrete hormones?
Yes, into the blood. So among exocrine glands, there are 3 main types. 3 main types of secretion. First is the merocrine secretion. I want you to take a look at this right cell. So you see this cell forms little vesicles that open up and secrete whatever was in the vesicles. The cell should remain intact. You all see that? Cool. In the apocrine secretion, the portion of the cell is being pinched off. Keep it in mind. I'm not going to go any further with this right now, but I want you to understand that once this chunk kind of flows away, it contains whatever was supposed to be secreted and some material that was not. It was just a part of the cell. Right? Organelles of cytoplasm, whatever. Okay? Good? And the last type of secretion, holocrine secretion. When the cell dies, it explodes. And, its chunks is what's supposed to be secreted. So, absolutely expect questions about different types of secretory glands. Okay? So this brings us to the connective tissue. And as you can imagine, connective tissue connects. So connective tissue consists of two main compartments. Okay? One compartment is the matrix. Another compartment are cells. Does that make sense? Now, if you had a chance to watch my review videos, you probably realize that I'm a sucker for flowcharts. I love flowcharts. This is a very flowchartable material. So, extracellular matrix can be divided into two compartments as well. One compartment is ground substance, which is a bunch of proteins, glycoproteins, and carbohydrates, and whatever. Make sense? Just a goo. And another compartment of extracellular matrix is fibers. So fibers are made out of proteins, specifically proteins, just proteins. And there are three types. You must know these three types, and you must know what they do, like what is the importance. Collagen fibers are extremely mechanically resilient. To give an idea, imagine you have a thread, a rope made of steel. If you would make the same rope, like same thickness, out of collagen, it would be stronger than steel. It's insanely strong. Okay? Elastic fibers, that's revealing. They can stretch and recoil. And reticular fibers form mesh, supporting mesh, just like a filter. Okay? All of these features will become important when we talk about individual tissues, right? So, why this is important? If I tell you we have a tissue called dense, regular connective tissue, which has a lot of collagen, what would be its main feature? Strength, resilience, right? It's strong. If I tell you we have tissue with a lot of elastic fibers, it can stretch and recoil. Yes. That makes sense? Okay, excellent. Now what about cells? I'm going to make it simpler. So you have to understand you don't need to memorize this entire table. Main cell types that I want you to know: fibroblast it restores connective tissue. Fibroblasts regrow it. Okay? White cells. You may have noticed I didn't use the word white blood cells, right? Mast cell never goes in the blood. If anyone here has allergy, that's what allergy is coming from, your mast cells. And, well, fat cells, part of the connective tissue. Okay? So, to summarize, know the structure at the level of, cells in matrix, what comprises matrix, what fiber types, and what they features are, and these main cell types. So connective tissue can be divided into proper and specialized. So these are proper connective tissue. I'm terrible with sports analogies, so I don't know. The original members of the band. And then you started adding more. Okay? So there are 6 types of connective tissue proper. 3 loose types and 3 dense types. First is loose areolar. It looks like dirt. There's all kinds of fibers, elastic, collagen. They're not super dense though. This is why we call it a loose tissue. There are not a lot of fibers. So tell me that. Loose tissue, will it be mechanically resilient? No. This tissue basically cushions all the organs. It's everywhere. Areolar connective tissue, loose areolar connective tissue is pretty much the wall of every organ. Okay? And this is what swells. This is where fluid accumulates when somebody develops edema. And it has a bunch of white blood cells that protect you from bacteria. Okay? Now, you cannot pinpoint at any particular organ. It's everywhere, really. Like it wraps around the intestines, for example. Loose adipose connective tissue. It's fat. Is it strong?
No.
Have you seen liposuction? Have you seen?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. One of my Instagram friends is a plastic surgeon in New York, and he posts videos from procedures. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's a pretty loose tissue. Okay? So here, for example, you see these are fat cells. And if you think that this is fat, it is not. This is the place where it was. When slides are prepared, they're prepared in a way that removes all actual fat, like fat molecules. So these cells effectively are empty on the slide. In the body, they very much not empty. Function, energy storage, insulation, to some extent organ protection, yes. But insulation and energy storage is the most important part. It goes across all different types of mammals. I don't remember if I mentioned the competition for the fattest bear. No? Yeah, it's soon to begin. It's a competition. Some national park in Alaska, on their website, they have like voting for the fattest bear, because bears accumulate fat to go through the winter. Warmth and energy. Now, the third type of loose tissue is loose reticular. So loose reticular connective tissue has a lot of, reticular fibers. They form a mesh, and this mesh is required for filtration of lymph in lymphoid organs. That's the only place you can find reticular tissue. Lymph nodes and spleen. So now we're moving on to dense, regular connective tissue. So what you see here is the bunch of parallel fibers. Okay, see that? So these fibers are parallel. This is why the term is regular. And the term is dense because there are a lot of them. Most of this tissue are just collagen fibers. There's multiple fibers that are aligned in one direction, provide you with a great mechanical resilience. Right? So that mechanical resilience can withstand an enormous force that is applied in only one direction. So if you think about structures in the human body that experience those unidirectional forces, what is it? It's tendons, for the most part, and ligaments. Right? So here's an example how strong it is. The name Ronnie Coleman, does it ring the bell? It should. Ronnie Coleman can squat 800 heaviest pounds. 800 pounds in the squat. Imagine the tension that is developed over Ronnie Coleman's patellar tendon. Well, he doesn't squat anymore, but when he was squatting those 800 solid-ass pounds. Okay? It's enormous. And yet, tendon's fine. On the other hand, if you apply the force at another angle, the tendon will snap. If you think about like the Achilles tendon tears, they do not happen when people squat or jump straight. It's maneuvers. It's when the force suddenly changes its direction and those fibers become torn. Okay, good? Dense irregular. Now, a bunch of collagen fibers. But these guys are directed all over the place. So still a lot. That's why dense, but the directionality, or lack thereof, makes it irregular. So you need this tissue in the places that experience a lot of mechanical forces that are directed not in one direction. Example would be the joint capsules. Like your shoulder, when you move your shoulder, the bones move in every direction, and the capsule has to hold everything, that's inside the joint. Skin. That's super important. Your skin being, tense in different directions. And the final part of connective tissue proper is dense elastic. I think the term is very self-explanatory, right? A lot of elastic fibers. So anywhere where there is a decent amount of stretch. So arteries, right? They have to expand and collapse. Bronchial tubes have to expand and collapse. And importantly, if they expand, they should be able to recoil by themselves. And that elasticity is provided by the elastic fibers. Now, these types are called specialized connective tissue. It doesn't make it any worse. Okay? Just different type. So, hyaline cartilage. Things to understand. Cartilage is shaped like a sandwich. And the picture of the sandwich will be pretty uniform. So two pieces of bread are two layers of, we're looking from the side. Do you understand? Like this is the longitudinal view. So pieces of the bread are perichondrium, and between the perichondrium, that's connective tissue also, between these pieces is matrix. Okay? What you see on the image here, you see matrix, and then do you see this white stuff? This is lacuna. Do you see that dot? This is a chondrocyte. The cell of the cartilage. So when you're going to be looking at cartilage under the microscope up there in 206, when you look at the slide, look for like the sandwich. Okay? So I'm going to postpone the locations of the cartilage because right now is not a time. Elastic cartilage. If you compare this image with the previous one, there are two main differences. Difference number one, do you see these fibers? Those elastic fibers, which makes cartilage elastic. Now, if you compare the size of lacunae, which has bigger lacunae? Elastic. So elastic cartilage is not as mechanically resilient. Does that make sense? Compared to hyaline cartilage. But it's elastic because there are a lot of empty spots and there are a lot of elastic fibers. So the only places where elastic cartilage is found in a human body are ears and epiglottis, which is the valve that closes your trachea when you swallow. That's it. Nowhere else. That's it. That's it for elastic. Finally, fibrocartilage. You see that it contains a lot of collagen fibers. You see how tiny and infrequent the lacunae are. A lot of collagen. Most of it is actually collagen. What do you think the function is? Something what? Associated with mechanics, right? Like mechanical force. It's very good in resisting compression. If you think about a human body, the parts of the human body that are compressed, mostly, first of all, spinal column. Each vertebrae is separated from another by intervertebral disc. It's one location. All intervertebral discs have fibrocartilage. Good? And the second location is between your pubic bones. Two parts of your big hip bones, when they meet, that's the pressure that is directed from your entire trunk on your hips. And these two pubic bones are separated by so-called pubic symphysis. That's it. Now, if you think about this, here we have elastic cartilage, ears and epiglottis, right? Fibrocartilage, intervertebral discs, and pubic symphysis. Every other cartilage is hyaline. I can provide you a pretty gross illustration, like how it can be relevant. So, when I was a kid, I had a house in the village, like super remote village. And in the fall, locals, we bought a pig and they butchered it for us. And it was hanging in the barn, and I was like 12 or 13. I was a city boy, so I was curious. Me and one girl from the village, we went to see the pig. Just, And this girl, she grew up in that village. She takes out a knife, cuts the pig's ear off, and starts munching on it. Well, she says that it's like chips. Just add some salt. But the point is, it's elastic cartilage. You can chew it. If you will try to do the same with the cartilage, like next time, like this Thanksgiving, get the cartilage out of a turkey and chew on it. There's nothing fun in it. It's just because it's much more mechanically resilient. Does that make sense? It's not really crunchy. Okay, two last types of connective tissue, bone. Maybe skip location and the function. You all understand why we need it, right? Basically, the biggest difference, it's calcified. It has a lot of calcium, that's why it's hard. And these are osteons. I'm not going to spend any time on the osteons because we're going to talk about it in Unit 5. Blood is a connective tissue as well. The plasma acts as matrix, and here are your white and red blood cells. Questions on the connective? If you want my advice, there's a video of me graphing connective tissue on the whiteboard as a flowchart. It's super convenient. Like, it immediately puts the structure to the whole story. Okay? Muscles. So, 3 types. Skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. I'm going to add some comments here in terms of like what you should know and stuff. So, it contracts fast. It is the strongest contraction. Please understand, strongest, the most powerful contractions are contractions of the skeletal muscle. In terms of the shape, long, cylindrical, multi-nuclei. I'm going to add this. Non-branched cells. Each muscle cell effectively is a long, long band. Clear? Now, if you look at each cell, these are nuclei. Do you acknowledge that these cells are striped? Those are called striations. I have no intention, sorry, we will explain where they come from in the Unit 6. Right now, why this is important, when you need to identify the tissue and you see the striations, it narrows it down to two possibilities. Because another tissue that also has striations is cardiac muscle. You see, also striated. However, there are differences. It contracts slower and weaker than skeletal. It is branched, and usually there is one nucleus. Now, important question. Cardiac muscle. Is it contracted voluntarily or involuntarily? Always. Okay. So all this story is about, like some people that can stop their heart and then start it over. It's bullshit. That physiologically is impossible. Okay? That makes sense? It's just as impossible as to, suffocate yourself by holding your breath. It's not possible. Now, the third type is smooth muscle. Shape-wise, totally different. If you look at the cell, yeah, that's a great selection of color on my side. If you look at the cell, it's kind of spindle-shaped. It has one nucleus. It has no striations. And cells usually form large sheets. Slowest and weakest contraction. So where is it found? It's found in the organs that you need to make narrower or wider. Without looking, well, give me examples of such organs. They have whole organs, but give me examples of such organs. Stomach, the entire thing. The entire stomach, the entire intestine, absolutely, 100%. Anything else? So again, it's a part of the intestine. Respiratory system, yes. Starting in smaller bronchi, because you don't want trachea to suddenly constrict and suffocate you. So smaller bronchi, yes. That esophagus is a mixed bag. There's a skeletal muscle on top, smooth muscle at the bottom.
Bladder?
Yeah, bladder. Anything else from there? How does urine get from kidneys to bladder? Ureters and urethra, yes. If you look at, both male and female reproductive systems, there's a lot of tubing involved. Human tubing is enormously long. And all of that tubing, not all of them, but like vas deferens, the duct that when, men get snapped vasectomy, that duct is like the smooth muscle to move the sperm. You forgot an enormous system of organs that can become wider or narrower. So again, that's not an enormous system. Cervix, yeah.
Skin?
Dude. No. Huh? Say again? Penis?
Muscle.
No. Remember, it's hollow organ. So it has to be functionally empty on the inside.
So you're reproductive, like
Reproductive, we got it. Say again? We got intestine, we got digestive, we got respiratory, we got reproductive.
lymphatic.
Sure. So the last bit that I wanted to mention about smooth muscle cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, is what stimulates the contraction of each. If you look at the skeletal muscle, that the only stimulus that it can receive is the nervous stimulation, which makes sense because only the nervous stimulation can be voluntary. Unlike skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle can be stimulated by a variety of things such as nervous stimulus, humoral, certain chemicals in the blood, chemical stimulation, for instance, calcium, hormonal, or mechanical, and the same is true for smooth muscle. So smooth muscle, since it is involuntary, can be stimulated by that variety of stimuli. Now, the last tissue type is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue consists of two types of cells, glial cells that provide support, and neurons that provide communication. We're going to talk about neurons in the Unit 2 about CNS. Right now, just understand that the function is the connection, the communication between different parts of the body, and that the number of glial cells exceeds the number of neurons by about 10 times.